Welcome to Inspiring Women in Audit, the only podcast celebrating the achievements and journeys of women in the internal audit industry. In each episode, we spotlight the extraordinary stories, insights, and expertise of these dynamic professionals. Our aim is to amplify their voices, inspiring a new generation of women auditors to share their knowledge, experiences, and unique perspectives. Remember to check our show notes for links to our social media channels and to subscribe to the Inspiring Women in Audit newsletter. This podcast is brought to you by I4 Global Results Limited, the audit communication experts dedicated to transforming your audit reporting and your audit results through communication, optimization, and collaboration. Now, let's dive into this episode of Inspiring Women in Audit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast. This is episode 27. And I'm super excited today to have as my guest, Silvina Coria. Silvina is an international management executive and CPA with more than 25 years of experience in global governance and forensic audit. Her career spans Latin America, Europe, India, and the United States, with deep expertise in building and leading internal audit and compliance functions across a wide range of industries. She's a recognized international speaker on transparency, data privacy, cybersecurity, compliance, and ethics, and has held senior leadership roles within the global oversight community, including chair of RIAS, which stands for Representatives of Internal Audit Services 2025, and co-chair of UN RIAS 2025-26. Silvina is also actively involved in international integrity and compliance initiatives, serves as a gender focal point, and supports and leads several female networks reflecting on her long-standing commitment to diversity and inclusion. Silvina, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Tracy, so much for the invitation and also for your work, in promoting the work of many female leaders that are out there globally doing amazing work for the profession, improving it and pushing forward. So it's really my pleasure to be here. I'm very grateful for the invitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure getting to know you over the summer and finally in person in October at the UN RIAS conference in The Hague. And how you lead and what you do and how you bring everyone together is really what, inspired me to have you on the podcast, because I think you have a perspective that not many of us have because you work within the UN structure. So let me take you back a little bit and ask you, how did audit first enter your life?
I've been, as I said, listening to some of your podcasts before, and I've seen some of the colleagues saying that they found that audit found them, during their first years or, after several years in the profession. In my case, I think it was a bit different, actually. So when I finished school, I wanted to break the family mandate that I had, because most of my family are CPAs, right? Or have studied CPAs. So I thought I was a really good student at school, and especially in accounting and economics. But I was enrolled. I said, okay, I'm not gonna be a CPA. I want to do something else. So we were living in Buenos Aires at that moment, and I said, like, okay, I'm gonna find a university that allowed me to have, at least a year of reflection of, to confirm what I liked it. So I enrolled in an university that I hold very much dear. It's UADE in Buenos Aires. And at that moment, and I think it was a good decision, they were having 3 degrees in jointly the first year. Marketing was the one that I enrolled, so I enrolled for marketing. And then CPAs and business administration had kind of like common classes, right? And during that first year, I discovered that it was not a family mandate. It was part of my DNA, right? So I quickly got very attractive. I got a lot of attraction to, especially some professors that were auditors, right? That they were leading an internal audit class, and I enrolled as volunteer assistant professor. I really like it. And so after that first year, as I said, I did not have any doubts. I wanted to pursue something related to auditing, definitely not tax auditing. so that, and CPA in Argentina is still today is a very the program at universities that they do it uh, are very full with details related to internal and external auditors, right? So after that, or in parallel, I started to work in an advertising agency, a very small enterprise. And after, as a very small organization, I had the chance to also do some practices, in Argentina and abroad, and related to internal controls, related to administration, but in some specific areas related to auditing media, right? So, and media investments. And I got uh, a lot of experience on that. So I was very specialized in that as a junior auditor, a mid senior auditor. And that's how that gave me the position to start in Bayer. And then from there, that's how I got the chance to have, especially in multinationals, right? A lot of good tools and a lot of good mentors that, unfortunately, for some reason, most of them were men, right? So my best managers were always men. Yeah. So, but I learned a lot from them, and I took that in my backpack, and I was like when I got the chance to lead people, I want to find my best way to do it, and the best way to mentor other younger generations, right? And because auditing, I feel that auditing is a fantastic profession. It allows you to have a cross-cutting image of what's going on. Uh, if you add business acumen, if you add stakeholder management, it allows you a lot, right? So, and to be also in touch with the reality, not just from the desks, like walking the companies, walking the organizations. It's a fantastic opportunity to grow. Then I still see a lot of people growing in auditing, and then especially in the private sector, right? And then using that capabilities, those skills that we learned, and to rock it as a CFO or to another position. So I think that it's something that allowed me to uh, implement my curiosity, right, for business in such a way that yeah, it continues to be something that I see myself doing, for quite more time.
It's a very interesting story that you absolutely didn't want to be a CPA. And now you're a CPA. And I was the exact opposite. Although I didn't know what a CPA was at the time, I just knew I wanted to be an accountant.
Oh, okay.
There's a whole little, drama in there of how I got there, but it was like I found something in high school that I was really good at,
Mhm.
and I thought there would be a lot of security in being an accountant, and I ended up going to the University of Waterloo in Canada, which had a specialized chartered accountancy program.
Mm,
So before then, I really didn't know what a CA or a CPA was, but that's
mm,
kind of what drove me. I wanted to be an
mm,
accountant. I was sure of it. And then
mm,
I think when I was at university, which is a very long time ago, we had one, if I remember correctly, one auditing course in fourth year,
mm.
and it was on the three E's. So, um, economical, efficient, and effective. And I fell in love. And I think there's something about auditing that just, I don't know, it's in our DNA, like you said. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's part of who we
So
are.
yeah, I still remember when in my speech when I graduated, right? So my mom was in shock in the audience because I was like, "Please God, give me the intelligence to never have to depend on, doing taxes, right? So she was like, because she was basically doing that for her clients, but yeah, I fell in love with auditing. I fell in love with, finding, not just the findings, but finding patterns, right? And
Yeah.
people, why good people made bad decisions, right? When pressure and incentives and ambiguity
Yeah.
collide, right? So I think that really attract me. Uh, and that's how I go also to compliance and to ethics and to transparency, right? So as kind of like the salt and pepper of what we do.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more awareness around those things today than back in the day. Back in the day when I was studying, we all had to work at an external accounting firm before we went into internal audit and all those things, and it's so different today, and I think it's so much better because you get people from all walks of life. You get people from inside organizations that then transition into audit, and you get people from internal audit that transition into the business, and you have this great sharing of knowledge and experience and expertise, and I think it only makes the companies stronger or the organizations, as in your
Yeah,
case.
yeah. But in my case, I've never worked directly in an external, like the big fours or like
Mhm.
an external field. But yes, I led teams, right, that were consulting us all over the world. So I got that the image of how it is and the
Mm.
differences between the two groups. But but I think it's in my case, I enjoy, since the very beginning what we do, and I try to transmit that right to my teams, to in all the positions that I
Yeah.
hold, since then, right? So and I think that's how one of the things that at the end of my life in the private sector, you know, when I got in touch with some of the activities that we were doing at that moment linked to UN or linked to, let's say, the global scenario, right? Besides revenue. And that's basically what drew me to the position that I hold now, right? And to the UN world, basically. Right.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do now? Because I think that's one of the very interesting things about you. One of many, of course, but how you went from private sector into the public sector and being part of the UN family.
Let's go back in some years, right? So I was in the last private sector positions that I hold. The companies were very, very committed to transparency and to anti-corruption practices. They had a global footprint, but I was working for locations that could be considered as emerging countries, right? So with all the challenges that you can face there. At that moment, specifically in Argentina, I was working for, I was elected as a trainer for an initiative that was funded by the UN, but carried out by the GIZ from the German government. The name is Alliance for Integrity. We were less than 10, professionals in the field that were selected for this. We were training SMEs from all over the world. It was a kind of like a pilot case, right? That they were piloting to train in how to cope with corruption, and to set up good controls and to cope with corruption practices to SMEs located in another emerging countries, specifically in India, Asia, some African countries, and of course, obviously Latin America. And this is something that you will like, because most of these SMEs that were approached by Alliance for Integrity were women with small entrepreneurs, and we were training them in how to cope with this, and when they were confronting with challenges like this that were jeopardizing their businesses, right? So, and I remember that experience for me was um, not eye-opening, because of course corruption has been there since world is world, but um, I think that, that allowed me to also be part of the G20 with the Argentinian edition. So we were part of, with this group for the task force of compliance and anti-corruption, and to see what was going on there, and to see, the discussions that we hold in Buenos Aires, in Washington, and elsewhere. I wanted to be part of that global, discussion, to have a global seat to safeguard public interest, and to stop for a little bit to discuss about revenue and stocks and everything. So I've always comment one case that happened at that moment, and because for me it was a striking moment in my career, right? So we were this very small group of people. I'm talking about early 2000s, right? So ages ago. And we were finishing one of these trainings, very excited to do that. And when we finished, the CEO of that company that was holding this, and probably because they needed to tick a box, right? Of those things, and now you will know why. He approached it to us. We were pretty excited. He said, like, ladies, because most of us we were ladies, do you know that what you are doing here with all these things, talking to the staff like this, it's really against our culture in Argentina, right? We were talking about transparency, anti-corruption, etc. And uh, that was more than 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, but and of course, there were very tough times in the country at that moment. I'm happy to say that after such a long time, all this group of 6, 8 women continue to shine and excel in their careers in the different seats that they are now. Uh, this alliance, this program grew fantastically. There are now around more than 300 trainers all over the world, with footprints in more than 20 countries. And uh, the country also in Argentina now, since 2022, has become, or access as a candidate for the OECD. Um, and I guess that CEO is no longer there, right? So I think that things have evolved,
Yeah.
and those things really, you know, uh, really put some light on what I wanted to do next, right? So I think that this is something that um, drew my path to where I am. I think it's an honor to represent my country, or the profession also of all those that are there in Latin America, in having the possibility to also run the audit community here at the global scale position. I think it's fantastic. The the change from private to the UN, or the UN system, or the multilateral system, I think it was definitely, it's not hard, but it's different, right? It's kind of like it's it's a different thing, right? So I think that if you think about the legitimacy, the transparency, and the complexities, right, are completely different. So
I would think so, because you've told me, and through my research, you have 193 member states, so you have a lot of stakeholders now.
99% of the global population. So I always tell my team is, if that doesn't commit you to do hard work, right? What's left, right? I think that it's an honor, and it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, as I said, in the private sector, the question is always about revenue. It's about, will this maximize performance? How our recommendations are tied to that. In the multilateral system, I think that the question that we always have in mind, or keep in mind, is, will this stand up for public accountability, right? So, and across cultures, legal frameworks, the amount of member states, right, that we serve, um, I, what we are doing also, it's it's also for our kids, for the future generations as well, right? So I think that but I was surprised about how much of the work is about legitimacy, right? So it's not enough to be right. It's you have to be, you must be understandable, fair, consistent, right? Across all the stakeholders that, of course, do not share same risk appetite, do not share, maybe they have, maybe not, they have completely different lenses in some cases, right? Um, that's why I focus on being coherent and comparable and to base or to integrate, because I have several hats in my actual position. We run internal audits, internal investigations, evaluations. We also do the quality audits of parts of what we do. So I try to integrate all those oversight streams into one strategy, very coherent, with KPIs that are robust, measurable, and so the organization and the governing bodies, can trust, on the okay, so what, how we are using their funds, and so I think that that's basically, how I see the environment between privates and now is seat.
With all of that, the word that popped up while I was listening to you was independence, because in the private sector, there's a lot of discussion about who the audit team reports to. Is it the audit committee as it's supposed to be? Or, and I find with a lot of European-based companies, it's the CFO that they report to. So
Mm.
there's just a lot of talk on LinkedIn and conferences and things about independence. And how do you handle that within the UN system?
But it's challenging, right? Because but I would say that in my previous experiences, what I learned is to have, a lot of a lot of uh, a lot of lines of reporting, right? So I guess I was used to, have a variety of the stakeholders uh, that some of them believed that they were my bosses, right? So it was like, but um, in the setup, I think that the system in particular has healthy reporting lines, um, and and there's a respect for the work that we have. I think, and when I talk about internal audit role in organizations like this, but I think about internal audit office and the leadership in particular, not just the support function of management or the committees. I think internal audit as a leadership function, right? So, and when when driving conversations with management, in particular, in my case, I report administratively to the director general, but I also have, a link with the our audit committee. We don't have it per se like that, but it's a committee that acts like that. But we also have, member state that acts on a yearly basis or a biannual basis as a facilitator for our topic. So they are pure experts from the member states on our topic. So it's a the level of communication, the discussion, it's a very high level professional level, right? So
Mhm.
there's a full understanding on the role. I guess not all the organizations probably has the same, but I think that there's a professional discussion and professional respect of each other's, and how the different offices, plays each role in particular in the system, right? So um, I guess it's not that different in terms of level of discussions with in the private sector when I'm talking about big multinationals, right? But I think that the challenge for the CIE in public sector is more about what I told before, right? About how to drive the messages when the context, right,
Mhm.
has different risk appetites, different lenses for sure. The geopolitical context also. You really need to keep in mind all that in order to draw your boundaries, right? So you need to pass the message and being extremely careful, objective, and always based on data, facts, not feelings, right?
So diplomatic as well in this kind of environment with so many different stakeholders. Do you find that you manage or lead differently in the public sector than you did in the private sector?
I think that, how I see my leadership style, um, I believe in being very effective as a leader, right? So, and I think that when working for an organization that has, the mission that we have, and for all those that are out there that probably do not know the organization for that I work for now, it's the OPCW, which is the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. Right? When you have that mission, that it's clearly it's not
The big
about
one.
quarterly wins, right? It's about moral clarity, operational discipline. I think that to be effective as a leader in an organization like this, it's you have to be very concrete. So definitely protecting independence, right? I think it's fundamental. Trust is a non-negotiable, right? Then how to translate risk into decisions that leaders can actually act on, right? Give you an example. So we were managing a lot of course, during our planning and annual things, our risk assurance exercise, right? And of course, we needed information from management, and we use technology to transform it into not just the typical Excel or typical, a file that you have to complete every here and there. We transform it into insights that they can. It's not just the tick in the box exercise. They are purely using it. They can use it on their day to day when things change in their business. So and I think that to that the CAE in this particular scenario needs to understand your stakeholder very well, so you can transform and you can use those opportunities to look for solutions for your stakeholders too, right? And of course, you need to keep your teams resilient, right? So, because of course the work is sensitive, right, and the stakes are real. It's not just about losing, money. It's a lot more, right? So,
People's lives are at stake
of
when we're
course, they
talking
are.
about chemical weapons.
Yeah, and for me, leadership isn't a title, right? So I've I remember in COVID times I took a leadership training with Oxford University, and we had a fantastic mentor there. The professor was Steve Molstein, and he we were discussing about the book, which is a great one, which talks about adaptive leadership, right? Which is by Heifetz and Linsky, right? And we were discussing about the concept of get of on the balcony, right? I'm sure that you know that concept, and I think and I see my leadership at this moment like that, right? So you have to, as a leader, you have to in internal audit, you need to know how to dance and when to go to the balcony to help your team, right? To
Yeah.
dance better, to navigate those waters. And I think it's a fantastic, it's a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic concept to keep in mind when when leading in these sorts of environments. Because as you said, there's a lot of diplomacy, but there's a lot at stake, right? That needs to happen sometimes super fast. You need to also uh, leave your teams to do their thing, that they do it great, but also knows when you have to, be there with them dancing, right?
So it sounds to me like there's a lot of soft skills involved, a lot of people skills involved in what it is that you do and in the environment that you're in. So it's being able to communicate effectively every day, to communicate in a way that people from all cultures around the world understand, using those facts, but also being able to present risk in a way that is going to resonate with them, that they understand, and being able to influence subtly what people think and where things are going. So, when you're hiring or developing auditors today, maybe how do you choose which ones you want to hire? Who's going to thrive in this kind of environment, and who's going to struggle in this kind of environment?
It's a great question, actually, because when you apply to positions within the multilateral, uh, landscape, right? But also, I think also it could help also for people that is applying for an international role within multinationals, right? Now with internet and the possibilities of remote work, right? You can definitely have people here in Europe working elsewhere, or vice versa. I think multiculturalism, to master that, it's a key skill, right? So, uh, and I think that when I recruit, and UN has been working very fine with that concept, right? Maybe for multinationals, for private sector, I see that still it's still a challenge, right? But when I recruit, or boost opportunities for people, when I see potential for what I call the future ready profile, right? So I think that there are five fundamentals for me in an internal auditor position when I recruit, for in the last couple of years, right? One is judgment over checklist, right? Basically. So to have this risk sense, to have a sense of prioritization, definitely courage with empathy. And I love that the IIA has also emphasized the courage, right? That this
Yeah.
capability is a skill that, auditors in general, um, some uh, still are struggling with, right? I think that to be able to deliver a tough message or a hard message in a constructive way, um, it's something fundamental, right? So, and also the this mentality about, I call it systems thinking, right? So to try the capability to see the end-to-end process, right? And the incentives that are around. So I think that this is something important. The fourth topic is about um, to be comfort with data, right? And
Mhm.
to have this analytics mindset, even if you don't have a certification, around systems, but to be comfortable with data analytics, um, uh, not necessarily to be a coder, right? Because for coding now we have AI, right? So,
Right.
so
That was what I was thinking. So we'll go there
exactly, right.
next. Yeah.
But to have the data mentality in just to ask the right questions, right, and
Yeah.
to extract it, and of course the influence skills, right? So I think that you can have the best report ever, all the facts, but if you cannot translate that into simple words to your stakeholder, then that has to act upon, what you are recommending.
And it's really
It's just decorative, right? So
right, and I feel like we need to be presenting these facts and these figures in a way that means something for them.
mhm,
And that means we need to understand what their pain points are. And, that old saying of what wakes them up at 3:30 in the morning in a cold sweat. I still today think that's valid, because what is it that we're doing or that we're recommending that can help you achieve your goals or prevent some of those pain points from coming up?
I think that when a lot of times in my experience, a lot of times is when 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 approaching new stakeholders and said, oh, the auditors are coming, and like they keep, I hate it so much, right? Having this negative idea towards our profession. And I said, like, look, I think that people do not necessarily hate or are afraid of audits. I'm more afraid of being cornered, right? Of not having, a transparent, honest, direct discussion, for example, on an exit meeting when you are presenting, facts and, potential recommendations that you also need to kind of like align to business expectations too, right? And it's not a negotiation, but stakeholders need to be listened to, right? They are the ones in front of what's going on the day to day. We are there for, if we're lucky, for a couple of weeks, right? So I think that's one of the things that we need to be aware, right? um I think that also to have the ability as a leader, when I see, when recruiting, when I see people saying, I found, and I see it, and I saw it on CVs, right? I found 500 findings in my last, you know that's not the point, right? So Uh, I remember one staff that I had, a very, very savvy auditor, and they said like, Silvina, I love that I'm finding a lot of things. And like, look, I'm not happy, right? Why you're not happy? Because we're gonna have, a 100 pages report. And like, look, I'm not happy because we're finding things, and that means that internal controls are not working, right? So, and things that probably we have audited in the past and continues to run not in a good way. I'm gonna be happy when you bring me a report that says, you know, that everything is working fine.
Yeah.
So,
It's funny. I was just teaching a group yesterday, um, and there were a lot of state auditors in there from the US. And that was a question that they posed to me is, what do you think about that audit mindset of we have to go and find as many mistakes as possible? That's our job. And I just thought, to me, that feels like an old, well, I don't mean old by age, but like just this traditional way of
it's old
thinking that
fashioned. It's
maybe
old
we
fashioned.
used to. And
Yeah,
that's
completely.
it's not really how we should be thinking today. If we have very few findings or issues identified, isn't that a good thing?
Mhm.
Because it means even though it's a risky area, we picked this audit because it was a risky area, things are covered.
Mhm.
The internal controls are working.
Mhm. Completely. Yeah.
It's flipping the lens and seeing it
Mm.
from a different perspective.
Yeah.
So you mentioned AI. Can we dive into AI for a little bit? Because I know if I was hiring today, I would want to hire someone who has either skills using AI already today, knowledge of, or a deep desire to learn more and to dive in and see how it can work within this role. So, can I ask you, like, what is your team's kind of AI journey so far? I imagine it's a totally different world and regulated differently when you're in the public space.
Completely. So, first of all, I have to say that I love technology, right? So I'm all in since my early uh, years, right? So if you think about how I position myself in this curve of implementing technology, right? So you have the innovators, you have the early adopters, and then you have the early and large majority, and then you have the laggards, right? Well, I'm always on the first part, right? So, and I love to do that personally and professionally, right? So, having said that, right, of course, it's completely different, right, from a private company uh, to these private and public, environments.
Mhm.
Uh, but I still believe that our AI journey is exciting and careful, right? So we are for the last couple of years exploring, right, some practical use cases, right? So
Mhm.
in planning, in analytics, in issue tracking, and definitely on knowledge management, because that's the, I would say it's the easiest and less sensitive part
Yeah.
of what we do, while we of course stay very disciplined on confidentiality, right, on the sensitive parts of the information, the biases, it's something that worries me, and the governance, of course, because most of the public sector, organizations in general globally are still struggling to set up governance over AI, right? Public sector need to compete with professionals, right, that are already savvy on AI, uh, that we cannot pay. They are being paid by the private sector. So it's really uh, challenging, right, to bring people in. I think that in our case, the challenges that we saw in these 3 years that we have been implementing or playing around with I think that um, one of the main concerns is the data readiness, right? So basically, garbage in, garbage out. So you can't do AI, on messy, very fragmented data.
Yeah.
The trust and the safeguards, right? So the to be able to explain what we do, it's a challenge, right? And the strong controls over it. The skills, as I said, we are fighting for resources when we don't have funds to pay for that experience and level of of expertise. So I think auditors that that now uh, we want needs to be bilingual, and I'm not talking about languages. I'm talking about risk mindset and technology mindset. So,
Yeah.
and then of course, the regulations, right? Especially in Europe. I think that Europe has, in comparison to other regions, fantastic starting points, right? Like the AI Act, all the great work that the OECD group is doing in bringing experts and papers and trying to set policies, for the EU. I think it's great, but these high standards are kind of like a feature, right? Not a barrier, right? So I think that we need to build governance, you know, sooner than later.
Are you
But
alone though? Like, do you do it from an OPCW perspective, or are you looking at it? Did they look at it from a whole UN perspective?
no, no, I'm giving you an example, right? So in our case, in OPCW, I think that it's, all the organizations within the system, within the wide system of UN, uh, have started to analyze and to implement
Mm,
different type of solutions, or analyzing the risks that AI brings. I think that OPCW has done a fantastic work around that, led by the director general. And I think that it's great. It's it's one of the good cases,
yeah.
around that, also supported a lot by member states in those discussions. In the case of internal audit team, what we have done, uh, and under the RIAS, right, under the one of the RIAS events or meetings we saw a couple of years ago, some of our banking colleagues were using video AI capabilities to show, some knowledge management things, and I came back to from DC to the Hague saying, guys, we need to do this because we are challenged. We're a very small team. We are struggling when we need to annually we need to give these trainings to all staff about what we do, and the typical routinary things. And I was like, look, we need to, I of course consulted with our CISO, our tech team, saying,
Mhm.
and I do this because at that moment, I'm talking about like 3 4 years ago, we didn't have anything. And like it's like, yeah, yeah, go for it because you are not talking about things that are sensitive, so you can use it and, great. So I sat with the youngest generation of my auditors. I said, like, look, guys, you are going to use this tool that our colleagues from, I think it was the IMF, were using, and let's try. And if we fail, but at least we try. And since then we have launched at least 4 or 5 different campaigns, very visually impactful for staff. We are being seen by our staff as innovation, as an innovative team, bringing messages. We did podcasts, based or managed by AI, and yeah, we love it, right? We didn't do the clones that I saw in some conferences, but yeah, I think that there are opportunities. I think that as a CAE or senior people in internal audit, I think that we don't need to be scared about AI. We need to embrace it
Yeah.
carefully, you know, building coalitions or stakeholders, or bringing in stakeholders from within the office to say, okay, how can we use this? Bringing the experts that you have to allow you to explore, in a careful environment, because it's not the future anymore. It's happening, and
It's happening right now. I do wonder sometimes though, because I've seen executive summaries from, an avatar is speaking the executive summary, and um, I do wonder how much time it takes those teams to actually get that to where it needs to be, because you can do an executive summary using AI. There's no issue there. But you've got to make sure it's the right tone, that it's accurate, that it's conveying the right messages. Then you've got to get your script set up. And I know it happens in seconds now, but getting it just right, I'm wondering if it actually takes as long as me having my executive summary, knowing it, and delivering it in a format like this and recording it and just sending it out,
yeah.
right?
But I'm gonna challenge you on that because I think that AI is the way I see it, right? So for me, AI is not it's not gonna be the profession's biggest threat, right? So
Oh
definitely,
no, I don't think it's a threat.
I
I
think
don't.
it, yeah, I think it's auditors, right? Who act like AI, basically, right? Like, because we have those, right? We have those that copy and paste executive summaries from previous audits and then like do some,
Oh,
arrangements.
breaks my
They
heart when
are
you say that.
acting as robotics, right? Cautious, super predictable, right? I'm sorry, AI won't replace auditors, right? It will expose those who never think, who never, evolve. And I'm sorry, but it's fine for me if that happens, right? So I think that it's like, I love the power of AI, and I think that's definitely it's going to be a revolution, not just in our profession, but in lots, right? In everything basically of what we do. It's to, I firmly believe that the use of technology, it's fantastic because it allows us to be more productive, more efficient, etc. But also it allows me to, in this case, I have a small team, to use the best asset that my team has, which is their intelligence, right?
Yes.
For the things that really matters, right?
Yeah.
To not just deliver, but to create value to the stakeholders. For
Yeah.
the rest, we have the technology,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. What I want to make sure is that auditors know how to do it anyway. So if they create an executive summary or, through with AI, that they know when it's a good one,
Mhm.
or they know when it needs more work, or they know when to change the tone, and they know that the language isn't right or the language is too generic. That's what I want for auditors, is not to lose that professional judgment of how to actually write a good executive summary, what makes a good executive summary. Um, that's I think my tiny fear, is that we
Mhm.
lose that because we're so focused on using the technology that we don't keep our skills up.
Mm-hmm. Your salt and pepper, your salt, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, listen, I want to talk about I don't know, do you call it UNRIAS or UN? I call it UN.
UN.
UNRIAS. That's this annual event that you have. And I was in that room in 2025. It was an amazing session. Number one, so well organized by you and your team, and your co-chairs. I mean, fantastic. So you were the co-chair, but people outside the UN system may not be aware of what this is. Can you briefly paint a picture of what this annual event is? Who's there? What's discussed? Why does it matter?
Yes, of course. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss and to talk about it and to highlight the great work that a lot of these leaders within the oversight profession are doing there. So UNRIAS is a community of internal audit leaders, right, as you said, from across the UN system and international organizations. This room that you have been there, in October, uh, but it's virtual during the year, right? And where people like us compare notes, on the hardest issues that you could ever imagine, right? Basically on governance, misconduct, procurement audit, cyber risks, whatever, integrity, right? Definitely AI is a standing point now, but of course protecting independence, right, of each organization that is part of the UNRIAS. It's very unique missions. There's no other organization that does the same thing. So I see it as and I work in many countries, in many networks, right, professional work. I think that this is one of those that it's really tangible, right, in peer learning, right, in cross-assurance thinking, right, as well, because some may have contacts, right, within the work that we do. And there's a strong sense of collective push towards to improve public trust on our organization. So, and this allows us to keep us pace, right? Because we know that risks travel faster than institutions. So I think that sharing this community allows us to share what works, what fails, how we can modernize our practices, within the UN public sector, without losing its soul, right? So, um, this UN RIAS is sitting below the RIAS network, which is the bigger umbrella. The RIAS network, hosts this annual meeting that you were invited. And thank you very much again for, being so gentle and flexible, right? When we did that. And the RIAS comprehends this UN RIAS and then the MFAs, which is the Monetary Financial Institutions Network, right? So there's two groups. In total, there's around 120 organizations, 130, and UN RIAS is around 40 organizations, right? Only. And I think that this is, one of these things that it's not an event, right? So it's a signal, right, that the profession in the public sector is evolving. We need to be faster, and we want to be recognized as leaders of that evolution, right? So chairing that annual meeting was in 2025 was honestly overwhelming from any angle, right?
I imagine.
Because of course the trust that the colleagues put on us wasn't abstract, right? So you see real people, real expectations, a big responsibility as a whole community, that was counting on us. And as I said, I did it with our team. It's very small. We were less than 10 people, and we brought more than 130 people on site, and then we have like 50 online. I'm very proud that this was one of those meetings that it was usually this event was only for heads and directors, but in my case, I'm committed to give opportunity and space for the next ones to be sitting on our seats, right? So I said, like, look, we have the opportunity to do this online. We're gonna bring these expert voices like Richard and some others, and we're going to give CPEs. Why don't we give the possibility to our junior people to log online? And the whole community said yes, because we want our teams to also succeed, to think about their next steps of their career. So we have that. And the team, we didn't just deliver. I think that we rock it, right? So
You did. Everything was so well organized.
yeah.
I met dozens and dozens of amazing individuals from the organizations who attended. The speakers were spot on and informative and insightful. And you made even going through security a pleasure. So
And
there
that was
was the
always
fire alarm, though. There was the fire alarm
oh yes,
on
remember
the
that.
day before
No,
when I was there.
I think that we created momentum, right? I think that I'm very proud of what we have accomplished. I think that this level of connection, that it was beyond that room, that big room that we have,
Yeah.
and a sense that the internal audit, as I said, it's not a support function. We are a leadership function, so we need to embrace that, right? And um, uh, so I'm still the co-chair for the UN RIA since late 2024. So I'm still, we are three people co-chairing, so I'm still there. But I pass the baton for the RIAs to our colleagues from the IIB in Beijing, because this year it will be hosted there. And but still being elected also as the chair last year, but also still keeping my seat as a co-chair for the UN RIAS, for me was fantastic, because at that moment, 2, 3 years ago, I was still considered new in the system, because
Right.
coming from the private, right? And the person who gave me his seat was a person that I really admired professionally. He's now the number one at the GIU. He moved from FAO to there, and for me it was a truly trust moment. Um, Professionally, I felt like, as I said, colleagues saying, "Hey, we trust you. We see that you are like pushing forward, and like please help us to raise the bar, right?" And for me,
Nice
it's
moment.
just that it's overwhelming, right? Just make our work sharper. For me, the trust that they put on us, on me, is for me, trust is always the highest currency in our profession, right? So it has been a very professional honor.
Fantastic. Well, you did an amazing job. Your team did, and the co-chairs as well. And I look forward to meeting you there again in the future. So I want to switch now because you're from Argentina, and I know you were associated with the IIA chapter in Argentina. Can you tell us about that relationship? And because I understand you still have a relationship today with them.
Argentina shaped my professional identity a lot, right? So in terms of resilience, creativity, and the habit of finding solutions, right? Under a lot of constraints. Probably your Latin American audience will say yes in this moment. I think that, the best analogy that I can find, and because I'm also a big football fan, is how an Argentinian character is built is Messi, right? So I think that you know um, trying your best, failing, trying your best, failing, trying your best, failing, getting a lot of things, and and don't feel disappointed when things go wrong, right? So I think that is, of course, I'm not Messi. I'm far from being Messi, but it's how our characters are built, right?
The
Um,
resilience there.
it's a lot, right? So I stay connected with the IIA there, because it keeps me grounded, right? And because I also believe that after shaping many teams, I have the honor. I love, that from my leadership positions is to create and to shape teams in a very diverse way. I'm not talking about gender. I'm talking about skills, geographical, places. Um, I I believe that Latin America is a tremendous source of talent, especially in internal auditing, right? I think it has to be something about the resilience and the lot of constraints that we have for everything. I still remember a professor in my first degree there that was saying, "Look, what we are teaching right now here is for you to find things when you are out working, right? It's not just about." And that phrase, he passed away many years ago, but those things are really part of the character of any professional in
Stick with you.
Argentina. So, and about the IIA chapter, and this is something that probably you will love. It's like the power of the IIA in Argentina is that for more than 10 years now, it has been always been led by women, right? The president of the IIA chapter, is a woman. Formally they have a 3 year term, right? Was a woman, and I was in a call with her a couple of days ago, and I told her, "Hey, I'm gonna be in this podcast, and I'm gonna, refer because I think it's a great example." And because the majority of internal audit, the leadership of internal audit positions in Argentina, in majority, we are women, right? It's an interesting case. So, and I think it's, um, you know, part of what I saw in the IIA in Argentina is about collaboration, the ethical backbone, how they push for talent development, right? Not just in Buenos Aires, but across the country. And I think that it's a great example of how the profession becomes stronger when women are sitting, at the table and are leading. Um, but I'm also, participating in many other networks, related to our profession, like, for example, now here in the Netherlands with my investigative team, we were approached by other UN colleagues that says, "Hey, we need a Dutch chapter for the women in investigative services." And we were like, "Look, I asked my colleagues in my staff in the investigation teams to say, 'Hey, do you want to do this?' And like they were super excited, and we created the Dutch chapter, and it's flying. We call it windmills. Sorry. So, and then,
I attended that meeting
yeah,
at the annual
right.
event, and I'm sitting here looking. I have a case for my little electronic cables and things, and I
Mhm.
have the pin
Yeah.
on there from that
Yes.
meeting.
And it's flying. We are now, getting in contact with universities here to bring
Yeah,
experts to these conversations, right?
sure.
And but also, in Argentina, I continue to be involved in women in compliance, which we started like we were also 10, 12 ages ago, and now it's a full network with a lot of impact, more than 300 members. Um, from all levels. It's not just leaders, but also, and we are, they are preparing. I'm not, I'm also now do not have too much time, but I'm there when they call me. They create webinars, and basically it's all for free. And then and also here, I'm a big supporter of another network, which is Rise and Lead, that is led by a fantastic Nigerian lady. Her name is Everia Kadiri, and she has become, a central network for women leadership in The Hague, right, and
Mhm.
Benelux, I would say. So yeah, I think that I always say this as a female leader, I feel responsible, right? That the next person to be here sitting, but not at my place, but at the office, right? Like, is a woman, and to bring and to shape champions, right? in other genders as well, right? I think that it's I'm super committed. I know that Argentina, Latin America in general, has this commitment with female development, but I'm personally, I like to think that I'm doing my part, right? And luckily, I see that challenges ahead, especially with the newer generations, right? With the younger generations, you can see that the way you speak with them, it's completely different as we spoke with our parents, and definitely, prior to that. So I have my hopes. Hopefully, the context helps, right? But we're still very far away.
I'm a big fan of supporting women, no matter whether it's the workplace or outside the workplace,
Mhm.
in other areas of their lives. And I do think it's changing. If I go back to the beginning of our conversation, you talked about like your mentors were mostly men.
Mm,
And when I think back, so when I was in external audit at Deloitte, we had on the big account, I worked on a really big account that we spent most of the year working on that account and all their subsidiaries and things. It was in the financial services sector. And the junior partner on all of those clients was a woman. And then when I went and worked in a bank in Canada as the senior auditor on site, reporting to the US, my manager and my director were women.
mm,
And I don't think I even knew who the head of audit was. You know? It was
mm.
no doubt a male. Not that we are male bashing, but just to say that, like, it's changing now. I see so many CAEs now that are women. I see so many auditors entering into the industry who are women, and I
Mhm.
just think it's a wonderful thing where we just have that much more diversity, and it's global. It's from all countries. It's from, people from all over the world, and
No,
that's what brings so many amazing different perspectives to what it is that we do.
no, fantastic. I think I agree with you, right? Um, I think that in my case, what I was explaining was more about mentors that maybe were a bit outside of the profession. Actually,
Mm,
in all my audit teams, I work mostly with women, right? So, but
okay.
I highlight for my career, for my professional growth. I have mentors that were maybe CFOs or, others in the community or in the executive committee that I work with.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I could relate, myself from the things that I learned from them, what I wanted to, my staff to be, to see me as a leader. And unfortunately, the worst managers that I had weren't women, right? So some of them, you know, incredible. But I also learned from that, uh,
Right.
and
Well, we learn from everybody. It doesn't matter what gender
yeah,
anybody is or isn't. It's that we have something to learn from everyone. We can learn what to model and we can learn what not to model.
yeah,
It's both
exactly,
sides of a coin and it's all super valuable. And I think it doesn't matter me so much whether for age or gender because we're just learning from each other all the
yeah,
time. And
yeah,
we all need to just make sure that I think that there aren't biases in place that prevent people from um, blossoming and sharing their perspectives and being successful no matter how they define
hmm
that success.
hmm hmm yes,
So,
completely agree.
well, listen, we're coming to the end of our session together, and I'm wondering, where do you go from here? You've accomplished so much. So, if you look forward to say the next 10 years, what kind of impact, if you look back, what kind of impact do you hope to have had, maybe in the UN system or the profession of internal audit or the next generation of auditors?
How I see the next 10 years, like in terms of legacy, what I want to leave, right, is maybe three things, right? So to and not maybe in the UN system, but as a professional, right? So
Mhm.
I think to have the sense of uh, to have built stronger trust, smarter oversight and braver auditors, right? Like those that really do not document history, but like auditors who shape the future, right? I like to think that the teams that I led and the things that we have done, or the things that we will do, you know, are in that direction, right? More. I'm here more for this second group, right? For those that leads with courage, for the ones that apply good judgment and the ability to turn risk into outcomes, right? So I think that and decisions, right? That really has an impact in the organizations that we serve. I think that, um, as I said before, right? I I don't want our profession to just to protect the value of the organizations. I want our profession to be, you know, like creating it, right? And to be there. That's why I really embrace advisory role, right? The advisory opportunity, because that allows us to have a different level of conversation with stakeholders that they these help us. It's a huge opportunity. And in the UN system we have fantastic examples. For example, the case that the nuclear agency is doing in Vienna, led by Daniele Alessani, right, and Paul Manning, in terms of the advisory role that they are doing. It's great, right? So because it allows to act kind of like as a consulting firm within these gigantic public organizations that are usually very bureaucratic. And I think that that allows us to shape a different view and perspective, hopefully from stakeholders towards internal audit. So I think that um, because my origins were marketing, right? So I love one phrase, or I rephrase some phrase that Drucker has, right? So the best way to predict internal audit's future is to stop waiting for it, is just to start building it, right?
I love that.
So I like that, right?
Have the courage to lead, have the courage to innovate.
Yeah. So I think it's again, AI is definitely transforming. It's a revolution. We don't have to be afraid of it. We need to embrace it, right? For all the younger professionals that I'm sure I'm following you, or they're following you, it's like, I think that, you know, don't be afraid of it, right? So embrace it. Don't be afraid to lead, do it, think, and help to change and to challenge the typical assumptions that we have. I think that it's you know and also for the women that is listening, right? um Maybe it's an old phrase, but it is that way, right? We don't need permission to live. Stop shrinking yourself to fit, right? So what you need is a couple of things: clarity, courage, a good coalition of professionals slash friends, network champions, because we need those,
Yep.
other than females, to push and to be there with us. And for me, the most important thing is that it won't be replaced by AI or any technologies. You have a point of view, right? And to be eager to defend it. And I think that this is my message in a nutshell.
It's an amazing message, and there's a lot in there, but I do love, stop waiting, don't wait, lead the change. I know it's sometimes an overused expression, but we really just need to lead the change that we want to see in the profession, and I think there's so many doing that today, and I hope that we're doing that together here with the podcast. So I want to thank you, Silvina, for being with me for the podcast today. It's been a
Thank
real
you.
pleasure and an honor to have you here, and I look forward to what we can create in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, but also for giving us a space. The public sector is doing an amazing job in in trying to elevate the profession, the professionalism. There's a lot of people that has built fantastic careers. So and of course, I'm very humbled to be one of the representatives of all this. So thank you very much for giving us the space to do that.